Thy word is a lamp unto my feet, and a light unto my path.
Today we're going to be reading from Psalms 132. As we read through this Psalms, there's really two distinct parts here to the Psalms. I believe it is a psalm that David has written. We'll talk a little bit about that in just a second. But there are 2 points that come up as we read the song. And one psalm is one of the words, the word forever. We're going to explore that just a little bit. The fact that forever in the Hebrew means age ending. And depending on which age, depending on the context, is how we pull out the age ending, portion of that. It's very important when you see the word forever that you look and see the context that surrounds it. I guess that's what I want to say. The other thing we're going to see is the dual meaning of prophecy. There's a great example of this in this particular Psalms, and we're going to explore that a little bit in detail, looking at some other verses and looking at that. But first of all, let's look at Psalms 132, 1 through 10. This is David proclaiming his zeal for the things of the Lord, the ark in particular. And because of his great zeal, he's reminding the Lord of that and telling him, bless my dynasty, be with me, knowing full well that God has already told him that his dynasty would be forever. So as we look at that, as we read verses 1 through 10, let's go back to Chronicles and remember how David, with what great fanfare David brought the ark up. And if you remember, David was so exuberant about it, he danced before the ark, not in his kingly robes, as just a common person. And his wife, then Saul's daughter, Michal, how angry she was with him because he allowed himself to be debased before the Lord, which she felt that was, and before the people. She didn't understand the humility that David had and the love that he had for God and the unbridled joy that it was for him to bring the ark home. Let's read 1 through 10. Lord, remember David and all his afflictions, how he sware unto the Lord and vowed unto the mighty God of Jacob. Surely I will come into thy tabernacle of my house. Surely I will not come into the tabernacle of my house, nor go up unto my bed. I will not give sleep to mine eyes, nor slumber to my eyelids, until I find out a place for the Lord, a habitation for the mighty God of Jacob. We have heard of it in Epaphra. We have found it in the midst of the wood. I will go into his tabernacles. We will worship at his footstool. Arise, O Lord, into thy rest, thou and the ark of thy strength. Let thy priests be clothed with righteousness. Let thy saints shout for joy. For thy servant David's sake, turn not away the face from thine anointed. Now we're going to consider verses 11 through 18. This is the Lord's response to fulfilling the covenant that he made to David and his response to his exuberance in verses 1 through 10. The Lord hath sworn in truth unto David, he will not turn from it. Of the fruit of thy body will I set upon thy throne. If thy children will keep my covenant and my testimony that I shall teach them, their children shall sit upon thy throne forevermore. For the Lord hath chosen Zion, he hath desired it for his habitation. This is my rest forevermore. Will I dwell, for I have desired it. I will abundantly bless her provision. I will satisfy her poor with bread. I will also clothe her priests with salvation, and her saints shall shout aloud for joy. There will I make the horn of David to bud. I have ordained a lamp for mine anointed. His enemies will I clothe with shame, but upon himself shall he his crown flourish. what a wonderful passage this is, showing God's love for David, a man after his own heart. We can really understand that. But let's take a look at verse 11. The Lord has sworn in truth unto David, he will not turn from it. Of a fruit of thy body will he set upon thy throne. This was the promise that he made to David in 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 16. The Lord said, and thine house, this was through the prophet Nathan, and thine house and thy kingdom shall be established forever before thee. Thy throne shall be established forever. But when you balance that out, remember the forever statement. Remember what God told David. He used the word if in there, but he also said it would be forever. Let's go to Jeremiah 22:30. Let's take a look at what is said there. Jeremiah 22:30. Thus saith the Lord, write yet this man childless, a man that shall not prosper in the days, for no man of his seed shall prosper, sitting upon the throne of David, and ruling any more in Judah. This was talking about Jehoiachin, one of the very last king, except for Zechariah. He was the uncle. But when we look at that, we say, wait a minute, which is right? It says here that no one from the seed of Jehoiachin is going to prosper on the throne of Judah anymore. But yet, if we go back to Psalms, it clearly says that it's going to be forever. But we see in verse 12 the word if, the tiny little word if, how critical it is. Well, we know for sure that the kings of Judah, Jehoiachin in particular, did not please God. Some were pleasing, some were not. But God said if they remain faithful, and they did not. And so, as we know, they went on into captivity. Well, as we contemplate that, we think a little bit, okay, well, all right. It says, though, the Lord hath sworn in verse 11, in a truth unto David, he will not turn from it. Of the fruit of thy body will sit upon thy throne. And this is going to be a forever thing. So as we look at that, we're confronted with the concept of dual prophecies, dual meanings within the same thing. Yes, God had said of the fruit of thy loins, your children will sit on the throne if they remain faithful. They did not. They went into captivity. But we also know that prophecy is also referring to Christ. We're going to turn over to Acts in just a minute and prove that statement. But we have both meanings here in the same prophecy. So as we look at that, we're reminded of what Daniel 2:44 said about the coming of the kingdom. That in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall be broken in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. There's that word again, forever. The two forevers right there together that God has talked about. Again, age ending. It'll end when? In the last days, in the last time, at judgment. What is Jesus going to do with the kingdom? He's going to take that kingdom and give it back to God. He must reign until all enemies are put under his feet. So even this has an ending. It has a time when the kingdom will be delivered up to God. So as we look at that, we say in the days of these kings, there was a set time when this prophecy was going to happen. We know that. We know that in the days of these kings refers to the Romans. And on the day of Pentecost, that kingdom, which we talked about, that we saw that we learn about in a really great way to remember it, is we can go and study a lot about the kingdom, this kingdom that we're talking about, in Psalms 2, Isaiah 2, Joel 2, and Acts 2. So let's turn over to Acts 2 and see what the New Testament writers have to say about this dual prophecy that we see being delivered from God. So in Acts 2, this is a very important verse because so many people get confused about this word forever. They'll take things like the Levitical priesthood, where God said it would be forever, or perpetual, and other places too where this word is used, and they apply it in the wrong age. So it's important for us to see this is a prophecy that this prophecy will go to the end of time, till time is no more. And we can understand that from the context, especially when we look at the verses that back that up. So we're going to read Acts 2:30 through 36, and then the lesson will be yours. Acts 2:30 through 36. And again, remember now, we're talking about Jesus Christ being told through Peter, through the Holy Ghost, that he is that promise that we just read about in Psalms. Therefore, being a prophet, and knowing that God had sworn an oath to him, that of the fruit of his loins, according to the flesh, that he would raise up Christ to sit on his throne. He's talking about David. If you back up to 29, you'll see that. He, seeing this before, spake of the resurrection of Christ, that the soul was not left in hell, neither his flesh did see corruption. This Jesus hath God raised up, whereof we are all witnesses. Therefore, being by the right hand of God exalted, and having received the Father, reigning, he is reigning, the promise of the Holy Ghost, he hath shed forth this which ye now see and hear. For David is not ascended into the heavens, but he saith unto himself, the Lord saith unto my Lord, sit thou at my right hand, until I make thy foes thy footstool. That's Psalms 110. Therefore let all the house of Israel know assuredly that God hath made that same Jesus, whom ye have crucified, both Lord and Christ. What a marvelous thing this is, to read 700 years ahead of time about this, even more than that, 1,000 years before this, if we're talking about David, that God planned to send his son, to have him sit on the throne of David. It's these prophecies that are faith building and so important to us. And this, I believe, Acts 2:30 through 36, ties that whole discussion about the forever that we discussed together. Thank you for listening.